you. Keep being strong. I hope you're encouraged to continue. Because we're going to see these visions and things in the next few weeks as we finish Daniel. We've kind of finished the story adventure of Daniel's life, and we're getting into his visions at this point. But I hope we find comfort. And I hope we also know that it's okay to not fully understand them. That it made me think of a 3-year-old who says, I want to drive. Well, you know, a 3-year-old doesn't have any concept of what's involved in driving. Even our 15-year-olds, when they get that way, and they've been to a class and they've been told, but when they actually get behind the steering wheel, it's totally different. And so I think until something actually happens, we just can't really grow in our gaining, or gain understanding with that. And that's kind of how these visions are. And they were for Daniel. They were future for him. Some of them we'll see have happened, and we can kind of figure them out, but some are still gonna be future, and we won't figure them out till they happen. And that's okay. And if we don't agree, that's okay. Just keep digging till you figure out where you fit in it. But we can take something from it. I hope this morning we take, and what helps us to be strong and courageous is that we find comfort in our God and who He is, and that we grow in God's comfort. And I love these pictures of just being wrapped in Jesus' arms, because that's where we are. We're wrapped in His arms. That's that comfort. I think in Daniel 7 we see God knows every beast, and He knows its defeat as well. And in chapter 8, we see He knows every detail of the future of today. So as we think of the word comfort, I looked it up, just think it's a person or thing that alleviates a difficult situation. So it makes what's hard, it makes it better. That one of the examples they gave was a quilt. Now they have these weighted blankets that are supposed to soothe you, and something like that, something that just better. Or in a sense of a verb, it was to restore to a sense of well-being. And we all need that at times when we're fearful, or, just because we're Christians doesn't mean there's not things that shake us. And we see that with Daniel. So it's okay to admit, I need comfort sometimes. And that's where we are. And so as we begin Daniel's vision, we're going back in time. It's about 14 years before he was in the lion's den. Nebuchadnezzar has died, but Belshazzar is just beginning his reign, so it's before the writing on the wall and all those kind of things. And basically we're told what this first vision means, most of it, that it goes right along. Let's go back. Because as he has the visions, I just want us to remember that God said, I am the one who comforts you. That's where our comfort comes. That's where Daniel's comfort would come. And when Daniel's given these visions, they're not in Jerusalem. Jerusalem's in ruins, and yet Isaiah, which is similar time frame, says, break forth into singing, you waste places of Jerusalem. For the Lord has comforted His people. He has redeemed Jerusalem. So even though Jerusalem hadn't been rebuilt, God saw that it would be rebuilt, it would be restored, it would be redeemed. It was as if it had already happened. And that's our comfort. When we look at that God has the final victory, it's as if that's already happened. Because as far as God's concerned, it has. So then as we look at the vision and we see the beast, they pretty much just line up with Nebuchadnezzar's statue. That the golden head was Babylon, and that's that lion with the eagle's wings. There's maybe a different emphasis. That golden head maybe is man's view of that kingdom and the beauty of it and the value of it. But God's view is that lion and the eagle's wings, and that's more of maybe an internal character of it. That those are predators. They seek the weak to devour them. And that's kind of what that kingdom did until the wings were plucked off and Nebuchadnezzar was given the heart of a man. It leads to his insanity and what he went through. The next one then is the bear that goes with the silvered arms and chest, that Medo-Persian. Our commentary talks about all of this when you get to reading that. Greece is then the leopard. Leopards are fast. So the fact that it's not only a fast animal, but has 4 wings and it swiftly covers the ground and takes over. This is another picture, because these are just people's interpretations of what they imagine beasts to look at. And then that unknown beast is Rome, and those iron legs, and then the feet, kind of that division in the end. And so Rome grew to each, historically, and you can look up maps, each one gained a little bit more territory and a little bit more territory, and Rome was the biggest and strongest. It became most powerful in 117 AD, and it just kind of slowly declined. There's still remnants of Rome today, and maybe there'll be a resurgence at some point. And as far as this, then some is still futuristic, because just like in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, remember that stone came in and totally defeated everything, and we learned that stone was Jesus Christ coming in his kingdom. And that's just what this vision shows as Daniel's kind of switches scenes from the animals to the throne room of God. And what an incredible vision that was. And again, I'm sure it doesn't look anything like this picture, but we can just envision that God knows. He sits on the throne. He knew what each of those beasts were. He could reveal that to Daniel. He knew each one would be defeated and come to an end. And wherever that is, that the God on the throne, that's God the Father, the Ancient of Days, and Jesus his Son is being presented to him. And he's given dominion and glory and the kingdom. And we see that just the fire there, the judgment that's there, and the thousands and thousands who are serving him and worshiping him and there with him. And then we're in this vision, they've got the 10 horns on that last animal, or whatever it is, the beast. And it talks about perhaps, that's maybe still future, that 10 European countries or some part of Rome, and Rome covered a big area. So it could even be more. Come together and somebody comes out of there. That little horn, scholars seem to agree that would be what we would call the Antichrist. Someone who would rise, have power, and have extreme control of the earth for a short time. It'll be a terrible time, there's no doubt about that. But in the end, Christ will come. That's our promise. Christ will come again and defeat him and totally destroy him forever and ever. Now, we can't see God's throne, can we? But we can be sure it's there. It's up in heaven. Just like, who can see your children? Well, one mom can see her child today. But we can know our children are back there even though we can't see them. We can be sure they're still here. And just as we can be sure God's throne is still in heaven. We can rest in that he knows every beast. He knows the beasts of your life and my life as we look at this. That God knows there's sin in this world. It's not perfect as he designed it. It is a broken world, and he knows that brokenness. He knows the hurts that you and I are facing today. He knows that in the brokenness that brought in disease and death, and that wasn't his plan. Someday that's going to be gone, and his kingdom will be restored. But today he knows the beasts in your life, and he knows their defeat. Just as that song says, he has the victory, and we can grow as we remember that. It helps us be comforted. All those beasts, whatever they look like, the beasts in our life, God, they will be defeated, and we can have comfort in that. And as we go on to chapter 8, we can be reminded God knows every detail. And I liked this little quote. It said, God has a key for every problem, a light for every shadow, a relief for every sorrow, and a plan for every tomorrow. Again, God is our comfort. And as Daniel sees this next vision, he sees himself in the city of Susa. Susa's several hundred miles away. Our commentary says 350, some said 200. I don't know why they can't agree. But Anyway, it's a distance. It was not an important city at the time when Daniel was alive. But he's taken there 100 years later. It will be an important city. It will be where King Xerxes has his palace and takes Esther as his queen. And she saves Jerusalem then from Susa. After that, Nehemiah will live there and serve as cupbearer to Artaxerxes, and he then is given permission to restore the wall to Jerusalem. So even though it was an important city when Daniel lived, it would become an important city. And in this vision, we have this ram. That was our first animal, and the two horns, one is shorter than the other. So Medo-Persia, they tell us that's what it means. Persia came later, but it grew stronger, and it was, we still kind of talk about the Persian Empire, but whoever talks about the Medes Empire, even though they were right together and kind of connected. So that's and that empire didn't advance east at all. After Daniel saw this vision, it went north, south, and west, just like this vision said. It didn't go into the Orient or go into eastward. And it became very strong, but all of a sudden somebody new came along who was stronger. There's that goat with that one horn. And this seems to be Alexander the Great, that he came in very swiftly, took control, died young, didn't have any heirs, and his empire is divided between 4 generals eventually. And so these are the different colors, the yellow, green, orange, and purple, were the 4 generals and what they controlled. And then out of the orange area, there came a man, and this picture's kind of weird, but it has some good information. You see the horns, and then at the top you see this little horn with a man's head. And again, they seem to think this is, I'm sure I'm going to butcher his name, and Antiochus Epiphanes. He was a ruler that was in the orange part. He came down, he took over Egypt, that Ptolemy's part, and ruled that, so he increased his land. That included then Jerusalem, and then Jerusalem rebelled. There was a rebellion there, and he goes into Jerusalem, subdues that rebellion, takes control of that city. And he's very powerful, and he persecutes the Jews in that city. He gets to the point where he doesn't allow them to worship on the Sabbath or circumcise their children or participate in any festivals, and he even sets up a statue of Jupiter in the temple and offers a pig, which would be totally sacrilegious in the temple. And so, again, scholars think this man totally fulfilled this prophecy hundreds of years after Daniel was given it. Now, it also may point or be a forerunner of the Antichrist as well and what he'll do, but they do think it was totally fulfilled in this man. In fact, the details of this vision that Daniel had are so complete and so completely fulfilled as we now look back on history, that there's opponents that say this couldn't have been written. Daniel couldn't have written it. It had to be written after the facts. And so they disregard that God revealed the future because it's so accurate. So it's interesting because only God knows those details, doesn't he? And so Daniel's writing, he sees what's going to happen hundreds of years in the future, and he only knows because he asks. This is just another point I forgot. It talks about his rule would be 230 or 2,300 evenings and mornings. And there's some discrepancy. It could mean evening and morning, meaning at one day. So 230 days would be about 6+ years. And that would, if that's the case, that kind of parallels when this Epiphanes came in and first took over Jerusalem to when he died in 164 BC. It could also mean like that's morning and evening. They're actually both counted, and so it's only half that number of days. I don't know that, because you don't care. But if that's the case, even that kind of works, because that's when he really laid down the law in Jerusalem and put all these penalties for them. So however you want to look at it, it still kind of correlates with him. But God is the one who reveals it. These visions, Daniel didn't know their meaning on his own. He had to ask. And this time we're told it was Gabriel who came and told him. That's the first mention of Gabriel in Scripture, is here in Daniel. And he's told the meaning, and even then, we find him stressed or in duress over it. And part of it, I do think, it's overwhelming the suffering he probably felt and the emotions that he went through there. I think he saw a lot of evil in that. But I also kind of think Daniel wasn't designed to know what was going to happen 200 years in the future and all the details of that, any more than we are designed to know what's going to happen in the future. I think God just designed us. He tells us to take one day at a time. He knows the details to the rest. And I love the Passion Translation of Matthew 6:34. It says, refuse to worry about tomorrow. There's a choice there. Don't go there. Refuse to worry about tomorrow. But deal with each challenge that comes your way one day at a time. Tomorrow will take care of itself. That's God's word. He knows all the details. And we know that too in Matthew 10:30. He knows the number of hairs on everybody's head in here today. He knows if you lost one in the hall as you walked in. He knows the new number you have now. He knows every detail. I hope you find comfort in that and grow in just the rest you can have in the love that God has for you. And it just, that idea makes me think of the poem, and you're probably familiar with Footprints, where it talks about, I saw and God, we were walking together on the beach, and on the hard times, God, it was only one set of footprints. What was up with that? And the answer was that when you could only see one set of footprints, that's when I carried you, when Christ carried you. Sometimes I wonder if there's ever two sets. Maybe he's carrying us every day. And we can just rest in that, because he knows every detail. And so it's just a reminder, there's not 1 second of your day today that God isn't with you. He promises to be with you always, to never leave you or forsake you. He knows your beasts, and he knows their defeat and how he's going to do that in his time. He knows that evil is going to prevail on this earth for a time, but there's going to come a day when there is no more evil, and Jesus Christ reigns forever and ever. And that I just love this picture. There's no comfort greater than the arms of Jesus Christ. So again, it's just a reminder. That's where we live, ladies, is in his arms as he carries us through our days. And so I hope you and I will choose to be comforted today as we choose to remain strong and courageous. Let me pray. God, thank you for your comfort of us. Thank you that you know what we're struggling with. You know what looks fearful maybe to us,